I want to introduce Paul Hawken. He's going to come on stage. Thanks, Liz. I'm sorry, I was sitting there waiting to be introduced, and I guess I haven't. You would too if you were me. You know what I mean? It's like I was just looking at the stage, watching Doug walk off. Hi, thank you so much for inviting me. I've been invited before. This is my first appearance at Net Impact. I'm really happy to be here. I want to, I'm standing here because I brought my own clicker. I want to talk about drawdown, and I want to try to, the end of my talk, I hope I've reconfigured the way you perceive and talk about climate change. This is definitely about solutions, but actually the core of everything we do in our words and how we think is the world we create. And worldviews create worlds. That's what worldviews do. And our worldview around climate change and global warming, I think, is extraordinarily confusing, upsetting, fear-inducing, which is good science, but also ineffective, and continues to be ineffective. So drawdown, the term means the first time on a year-to-year basis where greenhouse gases go down. And I would like to ask the people in the back, AV, to reset the counter, because I only have so much time here, and it shows I have 4 minutes left. And so maybe you could just reset that. I would appreciate that. Thanks so much. Technical. And so Project Drawdown really arose from the realization that the goals that we have established and we keep talking about with respect to climate change and global warming are, in my words, underwhelming, which is to reduce, to slow, to stabilize, to mitigate. Those sound familiar? Mitigation. Does anybody know what mitigation really means? Really? It means to lessen the pain or seriousness or severity of something. To lessen the pain. Is that what we want to do? Are we about lessening the pain? If you're going down the wrong road, and the road, at the end of the road is a cliff, and somebody says, well, slow down, you're still going on the road over the cliff, right? It's like Thelma and Louise in slow motion. And so that is essentially the rhetoric. That is how we're talking about climate change. And so the first thing about drawdown is that as an organization, Project Drawdown, we want to name the goal. If you don't name the goal, fat chance you're going to attain it. And the goal is not to reduce, but to reverse. Let's go back the other way. And I want to give you some background on how that came about. Oh, now the clicker doesn't work. There we go. I know, this sounds really harsh. It is. This is Greenland in the summer, in north of Greenland, the North Union Ice Research Station, where scientists from 14 countries basically drill down the ice to bedrock, the ice core to bedrock. I'll stop it here because it's interesting, but it's harsh. And what they do is bring up ice cores. And on those ice cores, they can detect exactly what happened every year back for 120, almost 30,000 years in the Greenland ice core when it was formerly just rock. Okay, and that was the Eemian period. And those ice cores, they can detect when there were volcanoes, pollen counts, carbon, CO2. It's quite extraordinary. Oh. Here we go. Okay, they set my next slide for me. And here is the next slide. And what this shows is basically CO2 levels today, which are 407 ppm. That dotted line you see is what our genus Homo has lived under for 2 million years, under 300 ppm. As a Homo floridiensis, erectus, Homo sapiens sapiens, we've never lived on the Earth above 300 ppm until 1937. So this is terra nova for us. We don't know what's going to happen. No experience in our species' history has occurred over 300 ppm except since 1937. Now, we are told the levels is 407, but actually this is the actual level, which is 490 ppm. And so how could that be? Mauna Loa in Hawaii measures CO2 only. It does not measure the other greenhouse gases, nitrous oxide, methane, hydrofluorocarbons. Those are very powerful greenhouse gases. You roll them up, we're at 490. Do you think there's a place here for mitigation, stabilization, reduction? Do you want to do that? I mean, this is absolute climate chaos coming at us at 490. So that's why we want to do Project Drawdown. This is how most people get their news about climate. It's just crazy. It's headlines that induce fear and threat and doom. The science is usually good, but then you have these, strange clickbait about wife smashing her husband's head with a frog ornament, and mummifying him for 18 years in plastic sheeting in the backyard. And you go, somehow there's supposed to be an equivalency here between the Tower Bridge going down from high rising seas, from climate change, and a frog ornament. And in here is global warming could deplete the ocean's oxygen. It can, it could. Good science. Again, more clickbait. And then here, look at this one. Good science and 20 things you never knew you could do with Coca-Cola, which is, you can clean the toilet with it. This, are you advancing my slides for me now in the back? Because I'm not. Hello? Okay. So if you Google the top 10 things you can do as an individual, this is what you get. 2 science-based organizations. On the left side, the Scientific American, it's like, read it, okay? Well, they're like proverbs. These are proverbial statements. Number 6 should be love your mother, Of course, eat smart, be efficient, consume less, move closer to work. Who can afford to in San Francisco? Forego fossil fuels, try it for one day. And so on the right side is Union Concerned Scientists, and the number 3 solution, check it out, a power strip in your home entertainment center. Like, really? And again, so what happens when people see the headlines and the fear-mongering that goes on about climate change, which is based on good science, don't get me wrong, and then they see what they can do as individuals, there is a massive disconnect. They know what they're being told they can do, and the problem at hand is inadequate, what they can do. And they go into what? They go into guilt, they go into shame, they go into numbness, they go into disengagement. Why engage in something that's this formidable where I can do this little? And that's the situation we're in right now. I'm going to try this and see how it goes. Fantastic. So what I wanted to know is, where did we stand? Is it game over? Maybe. Who knows? So forth. We don't know. And so I created Project Drawdown, whose purpose was to map, measure, and model the 100 most substantive solutions to reversing global warming. Now, you would think that this had been done before. Climate change has been in the public spheres for 40 years. No one has measured the top 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 solutions. I'm not kidding you. It's never been done. It's crazy. I can't explain why. I don't know why. So we set out to do it because we wanted to know. I think everybody wants to know. What can we do? What impact will it have? We measured solutions that are in place, hands-on, practice, W.W. Granger. We did not measure solutions that people are proposing. We wanted to know if these solutions, which we measure, which are all scaling, if they continue to scale for 30 years, could we reverse global warming? Good question. We wanted to know. That's what we set out to do. We didn't have any money, so we went out to the world, and I don't know if any of my Drawdown Fellows are here. If they are, raise your hand, shout out, but you, yes? If you see yourself here, that's good, because that's exactly who they are. They're from 22 countries, 6 continents. We put the call out at universities and colleges everywhere for scientists and research fellows to do the research. The core research of Drawdown is done by these people, right? Half PhDs, almost half women. It was a meritocracy. We didn't try to make it half or this. And all double degrees, Aga Khan Award winners, White House fellows, Rhodes Scholars, Fulbright Scholars, an amazing group of people. And they were joined by 128 advisors. Some of these names you'll recognize. And then also 40 outside expert reviewers, scientific expert reviewers. So we had about 220 people creating Project Radon. So what you're going to see is a series of solutions that will give you a sense of the diversity of what we found. But the point I want to make here is that this isn't a small NGO in Sausalito saying, we know what the solutions are. We did not. This is a collaboration of people. It's a small we talking to the big we, saying, this is what we know, not what this NGO knows in Sausalito. If an NGO said that, we'd have all the credibility of a lentil. Come on, you know, and say, thank you for sharing, and, you know. And so it was very important that the data be really grounded in extraordinary research methodology and be impeccable. And I can say it is, and it always can be better. What did we do? We did the math. That's all we did. We just did the math without bias. And if you look at this, if you look at this, we did the math on the impact, carbon, and greenhouse gas equivalents. And we did the impact on money. How much does it cost? Do we net? Do we lose? Et cetera, over 30 years. And so the top line is basically the ranking by CO2 or CO2 equivalent impact. There's only two things you can do about the atmosphere: stop putting greenhouse gases up there or bring them back home. Sequester. And you can't draw down, you can't reverse global warming unless you bring the gases back down. And you do that through land use and photosynthesis. I'll get to that. The next line, the bottom line, net cost and net savings, is comparing geothermal energy where it's applicable and comparing it to business as usual, which would be combined cycle gas or coal. And in this case, it's cheaper. So there's a negative cost there, negative net cost, 155 billion. And then there is the net savings or costs, and the net savings is $1.0 trillion over 30 years. So what you'll see now is just a bunch of solutions, and you'll see the numbers on the back, on the side. Afforestation is putting trees where there never has been trees, or where they were there so long ago that people have forgotten about it, like Scotland, like Greenland, like Iceland. We're all forested. Not all of Greenland, of course, but southern Greenland. So, okay, and this is high-speed rail. Well, this one worked better before. We'll try this one. Okay, this is high-speed rail. This is, I don't know. There we go. Japanese and Chinese own this one. Okay, this is indigenous people's land management. Nobody understands land better than the people who've been there the longest. Indigenous is the adjective for indigene. Indigene means the original inhabitant. It's no wonder that they know more about that than anybody else, because they have been there for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,000 years, and they know where they live, and they understand it very well. The key number there is the one on the bottom right, which is 849.3 gigatons, metric tons of carbon, which they protect. That's more CO2 than is in the atmosphere itself. So the land they are on is so precious to us, very precious to them, of course, but how about us too? This is improved rice cultivation. 2 ways to improve it that reduce methane emissions by 50% and improve the productivity of the rice, that is for the farmer, which means there is no net cost, there's savings. This is onshore wind, give a sense of the scale of wind turbines that are going up today. This is a number 2 solution, as you can see, the savings of $7.43 trillion over 30 years. Our numbers are very, very conservative. They're actually going to be much greater than that because of the rate at which costs are going down and implementation is scaling. But also this is offshore wind. And oftentimes what you see in sort of these scenarios or pictures of what the future could be like. You see a wind turbine on a grassy knoll with wildflowers and children playing in the blue sky, and you go, wow, that's so great, it's my future. That's a terrible place to put a wind turbine. It's a photo op only. This is where you want to put them, where the weather's really lousy. This is the North Sea. This is Norfolk, the Sheringham Shoal. These are Siemens 3-megawatt wind turbines. This is a woman, Uru woman in Lake Titicaca. She lives on a straw island, which she has to replace, the straw which she has to replace every 90 days or the island sinks. She lives in a straw hut with her 2 daughters, and up until she got her first solar panel, she used kerosene to light her home at night so her daughters could study. And the importance here is that climate change and the solutions to climate change have been so disaggregated from social justice, from the many, many other important ramifications and impacts these solutions have. And virtually 98 of the 100 solutions in Drawdown are basically, we call it no regret solutions, which is we would want to do these if there wasn't a climate scientist alive and we were clueless as to what was causing extreme weather. We would still want to do these for really compelling human reasons. And this is rooftop solar. We didn't want to show a 3-car garage in Atlanta with a 10-kilowatt array on it, which is what you often see, the suburbs with solar panels. You go, Ray, that's not a good thing, actually. It is a good thing, but I mean, we have to change how much electricity we're consuming, not just swap out solar for coal and gas. And this is a very important one. It's called women's smallholders. We are told by Big Ag that basically without Big Ag we would starve. Nothing could be farther from the truth. Big Ag produces corn and soy and sugar, right? And cows and pigs. That's what Big Ag produces. It produces obesity, type 2 diabetes, and heart disease and stroke. It produces sickness. We don't need those things, okay, to have a healthy life. In fact, we need not to have them in order to have a healthy life. 73% of the food is produced by smallholders in the world, and 40+% of those are women. Women produce more food in the world than Big Ag. Like, who knew, right? We don't hear that. But they produce food that's healthy, that's good for their family and community. But this solution is if they got the same support that men get in terms of tools and training and seeds, they outperform men. And there would be 150 to 200 million people in the world who would have food now or that don't have it. In other words, it's a really important solution in terms of empowering women, something we'll return to. This is the Kermode bear, the great white bear in the Great Bear Forest. This is forest protection just like indigenous land protection is, except the indigenous people are gone, unfortunately, and so now they're under state or governmental protection. This is British Columbia. Again, the figure on the bottom, 896.2 gigatons of CO2 and biomass beneath in the soil. We've got to keep that there. We cannot burn, deforest, and degrade our forest lands. This is regenerative agriculture. Big Ag is degenerative agriculture. I don't care what they say, basically because they're killing the soil. They're destroying the soil. So regenerative agriculture is understanding that soil is alive, it's living. In a handful of soil are more organisms than there are people ever been on this planet. It is so complex, we still don't understand it, but we do know that healthy soil is the only way to produce a healthy plant, and healthy food is the way you produce healthy people, and healthy people have healthy minds, and healthy minds do things very differently than sick people being fed processed food that comes from Big Ag. So regenerative agriculture is an extremely important aspect, and we'll get back to food because food itself is so important with respect to reversing global warming. This is food waste, and you have a program there. It's the number 3 solution. Again, who knew, really? And this does not count the methane emissions caused by landfilling food. When you put food or any organic matter in an anaerobic environment, methanogens take over and produce methane. And methane is 28 to 34 times more powerful than CO2 as a greenhouse gas. That's not in these numbers. If they were, it would be much higher. And this is a Dasanak woman, Ethiopia. She and her tribe live across the river from Kenya, where they're building a bridge, and they have built a bar on the other side of the river. The women go there every morning, pick up all the stuff the men have thrown away, mostly beer bottle caps, but SIM cards and watch bands and whatever, and they make headdresses and jewelry out of it. So this is household recycling. They now sell this jewelry to boutiques in France. And so, again, didn't want to show a blue bin. You know what I'm saying? It's like this are much bigger than this sort of Calvinist idea of going out there, you know, early in the morning with our recycling. There's much more to it. This is the number 4 solution, which is a plant-rich diet. And what we modeled here is reducing the protein intake in countries like ours, where you get 100, 110 grams of protein per day, and even told to consume that much if you're pregnant. Don't. And I'm not a doctor, so don't listen to me, but don't do it. This is not medical advice. Please consult with your physician. But I'm saying it's too much. It's not healthy for men or women, pregnant or not pregnant. 50 grams, 60 grams at the most is a healthy number. We reduced it in those countries, and we increased it in those countries where there's insufficient protein intake and caloric intake. Together with an admixture of plant-based proteins, it comes out to be the number 4 solution. So now number 3 and number 4 are both food-based solutions. And we also modeled 20 coming attractions, which are, these are solutions that are in place. They are not, they're nascent, they're incipient, they're cutting edge. There isn't data to model them, so we didn't. So there's no numbers there, just the name of it. This is invented by a physicist. These are frameworks made of recycled PET that are 25 meters below the sea, so tankers and boats can go over them with impunity. And they have these pumps that are actuated by the rise and fall of the sea to bring up the cold thermocline below, 200, 300, 400 feet down, which are the cold waters, which are the nutrient-laden waters. And you do that, within weeks you get this. You get phytoplankton, zooplankton, algae, you get kelp, you get feeder fish, you get forage fish. Oceans will regenerate themselves if the circulation patterns are there in terms of nutrients. And what we've done is stop that, because 93.4% of all warming thus far has actually been taken up by water, by the oceans, not on land. And it's, so the normal, these are thermal blankets that are suppressing natural circulation cycles, okay? And so when you restore them, this is what happens. You get food, you get fish. Nothing sequesters carbon faster than kelp, nothing. It's amazing. But you take out the carbonic acid, you deacidify the oceans, you cool the waters, you can reverse coral bleaching. This is, what I think when we want to include these is to give people a sense that, yeah, we modeled 80 that are well in hand, but at the same time, humanity is brilliant, it's on the case, it's innovative, creative. You just heard from Toyota what they're doing, right? I mean, an example, and we don't hear that, we don't see that, we don't read that. What we read about is basically ignorance and corruption and, you know, bad tweets, and it's infecting our minds because it blocks out the sky. It's like having complete political and basically spiritual smog all over the place. And what we're saying is, no, humanity does care about this issue, and we don't know that, we don't see that. There's another solution. 2 biologists in Siberia want to repopulate the mammoth steppe, the subarctic circle, with reindeer. These are reindeer, of course, but reindeer and muskox and wolves and Yakutian horses and the creatures that used to be there. Why? Well, it would be a good thing to do just unto itself. But what happens in the winter, these creatures can withstand temperatures of minus 100 degrees Fahrenheit, but they need to eat. It's cold, and so they brush away the snow, which you see there. They brush it away to get the dead browse. That lowers the temperature of the soil by 2 degrees Celsius, which is a permafrost protection plan. So again, you see these beautiful, beautiful imaginings and thinking and understanding on a systems level. The paradigm is, the one we're told about climate change is, we found all this coal, gas, and oil, built the industrial age, combusted it, and it's up there. True. But the real paradigm is that human beings have broken all of the biological cycles on Earth. The hydrological cycle, the carbon cycle, the nitrogen cycle, you name them. We've broken them all. And now it's about restoring those. And this is one of these restoration technologies. This is building with wood. I don't mean your house, I mean skyscrapers. And you say, well, I'm not going to be in there when the fire starts. It's safer than steel and concrete. These gluams, these CLTs don't burn, they char. They don't burn, they won't burn. And there is now an 80-story skyscraper planned and going up in London, 1,000 feet tall, all wood. If we build of wood instead of steel and concrete, which we can do, we know how to do it, the Europeans own this right now, we don't do it much here at all, it has a significant impact on reducing emissions. Concrete is 5% of emissions, steel is between 4 and 5. Right there, you have 10%, almost 10% of our global emissions. The Chinese are going to build 50,000 skyscrapers in the next 30 years. So, and the last one is a cow walks onto a beach is not really the name of this technology, but but it's a farmer in Prince Edward Island who noticed that his dairy cows did so much better in terms of producing milk when they ate kelp. And so the question was why? And he asked the county agent, who got a scientist, Rob Fairley, who said, well, must be methane, because methane is such an inefficient metabolic process for a ruminant. And they divided the herd, fed some kelp, some not, put bags over their head 5 times a day, measured exhalations, and sure enough, less methane. Not a whole lot, but less. This scientist heard about a scientist in Australia who was doing the same work, and they tried to find something that they could feed to ruminants that wasn't kelp, which isn't practical and doesn't exist in those quantities. And they found an algae, which is invasive, an algae which native Hawaiians eat in their cuisine called Asparagopsis taxiformis, which, when fed as a 2% supplement to ruminants, reduces methane emissions by 70 to 90%. And cows are alone, cattle and cows, CAFOs, are responsible for at least 10 to 14% of global emissions. So this is a huge solution. So what surprised us? Everything surprised us. This has surprised us. Food is the biggest sector, not energy generation. How could that possibly be? For 2 reasons. One is food is an enormous emitter of greenhouse gases, methane, nitrous oxide, CO2. Right? If you stop that and then reverse it and farm and create a food system that's actually sequestering CO2, it's a twofer. You stop putting stuff up and you bring it down. Nothing else can really do that, except maybe land use on the other side. So food is really the #1 sector, as it is divided by us anyway. Refrigeration management became the #1 solution. We were so disappointed, so unsexy. But hydrofluorocarbons are about, can be from 1 to 9,000 times more powerful than CO2. Electricity generation is 5 of the top 20. If you combine 22, which is offshore wind, with #2 onshore, it's the #1 solution. But actually, this is the one I think surprised a lot of people. This is the #6 solution, which is educating girls. What does that have to do in us, in our list of solutions? It has everything to do with it. Because girls are being yanked out of school pre or at puberty for cultural reasons, for religious reasons, for customary reasons, to go to work, to put their brothers through school. For whatever reason, and then there's early marriage, they have an average of 5 children. If she is allowed and supported to matriculate to, say, a high school level, She chooses family planning and has on an average of 2+ children. So it's a difference between 2+ and 5+ children. She is educated, she earns more, she puts more resources into those children. They repeat her mother's behavior, sons and daughters, and you have a virtuous circle. So you yank a girl out, you have a vicious circle of health and poverty, and that family is going to try to marry off their daughters sooner. It's not a good scenario. This is one pathway to family planning. The other pathway to family planning is family planning. And what this means is to have clinics and support women's reproductive health and well-being and choices everywhere in the world. And I mean Arkansas and Alabama, people in Africa, yeah, right. We have to do it here, everywhere in the world to support women. You combine those two numbers are the difference between the high and median population projections by the UN in 2050. It's the #1 solution to reversing global warming is to empower girls and women. #1. Again, who knew? What you hear from these white charismatic male vertebrates who talk about solutions, nothing wrong, I'm a white male, I think they're okay, but I'm just saying, what you hear is the solution is solar, solar, wind, solar, solar, wind, Elon Musk, and don't eat so many burgers, and you guys get a hall pass to the 22nd century. And I can tell you that's a scientific howler. Those are crucial solutions. Nothing could be further from the truth. It's just not true. People who are saying that have not done the math. Just do the math. I had somebody call me. The solutions, the numbers didn't come out until February. The book was published in April. Why? Because we had the plates. We could wait until the last moment. And somebody, one of the top 100 scientists in the world in climate, called me on our advisory board, said, how's it going? I said, it's going great. We just got the numbers, though, and we're shocked at the top 5, 10, 20. We're just shocked at the numbers. And I said, I don't think anybody in the world knows the top 5 solutions. No one. We didn't, for sure. Ban Ki-moon, Christiana Figueres, Jeffrey Sachs, Al Gore, Bill McKibben, Jim Hansen, you name it. I said, I don't think anybody knows. And she said, what are they? I said, you tell me. And so she did. And she thought about it. Mass transit, it'd be EVs, there'd be solar, She was going, okay, here they are. Here's the solution to be in the top 5. And she said, how did I do? And I said, it wasn't the point of the question. I said, well, what was the point of the question? The point was that you are a professor, you're published, you're IPCC, everybody respects you, you've been in this business 30 years, and look how long it took you to come up with 5 solutions. So if it took you that long, what about the other 7.4 billion people in the world? What do they know? And she said, oh, you're right. She said, how did I do? I said, they're all wrong, actually. She was guessing. Almost everybody you hear is guessing. It's what they believe. Jim Hansen says, if we don't go nuclear, we're toast. And I wasn't being metaphorical there either. He said, okay. Bill McKibben, 4 months later, said if we go 100% solar, we'll stabilize emissions. Those are beliefs of some of the most literate, amazing people in the world in terms of climate. And what I'm saying is beliefs don't cut it here. We do the math, okay? And so this is what the solutions look like on a pie chart. All of them are important. A system caused it. It's only a system that can heal it. There are no small solutions. So don't rush to the exits, just to the big ones. Do the ones, work on the ones that mean something to you, that light you up, where you have expertise, where you have knowledge, where you have curiosity. That's what you should do. It's not like everybody should do the top 5 or top 10. What makes sense to you? People ask me, what should I do? I don't know. I don't know you. You know. You'll figure it out, right? And the book then is titled the most comprehensive plan ever proposed to reverse global warming. Why? Because it is the only plan ever proposed. Isn't that crazy? I mean, we could have said the most brilliant, the most literate, the most nuanced. It would still be true because there's nothing to compare it to. And we welcome the comparison. We welcome other people to join in with us. The thing I want to end with is really a language. The language we're using is divisive, dualistic. It's about war. We're going to fight climate change. We're going to combat it. You talk about climate crusaders. I'm sorry, have you read history? What a effing unfortunate term that is. Come on. And this idea that it's the enemy and that we're the victim and we got to fight it, that's the thinking that got us into this situation. That there's something other on this planet. There's an other ocean. There's an other climate. We can put plastic anywhere. There's other rivers. There's other people. There's other races. Give me a break. That's the world we live in. That's causing the political instability, the economic instability. It is the cause of our problems. It's not the cure. We can't cure this. Can't heal it if there's other, if we're trying to be right and make other people wrong, if we're thinking the climate is happening to us. Climate change is happening for us. It is not a curse, it's a blessing, it's an offering. You know this. Any system, in any system, whether it's a company, a city, whether it's your body, which is a system, if you ignore feedbacks, it dies, it perishes. The climate is so sweet in its giving us feedback. And we can either act on it and reimagine what it means to be a human being and transform this world, or we can just go over the cliff. But we can't fight it. And you see these negative terms: carbon war room, negative emissions, decarbonization. Decarbonization is the name of the problem. We burnt fossil fuels, we cut our trees, we use industrial agriculture and plows to basically turn our soil to dirt, right? Releasing CO2. Decarbonization is what happened. That's what we did. It's not the solution. Recarbonization is, and so forth. And finally, I want to talk about 2C. You hear about it over and over and over again. 2C, this magic number beyond which, if we go 2C higher than temperatures in the pre-industrial age, that somehow we've passed a threshold in which all hell breaks loose. We may never come back. The positive feedback loop set in, etc. Right? I mean, that's essentially how it's used. It's used in Paris, Marrakesh, in Bonn, COP23. 2C, 2C. People talk about 1.5 C2, okay? But whatever it is, 2C is considered a science-based target. Nothing could be farther from the truth. That number was picked out of thin air by Johann Schellenhuber in 1994 for the German ministry because they're having trouble understanding the science. He said, just let me make it simple for you. We can't go over 2C. He made it up. It's not science-based. Now, it could be true, however. Just because it's a guess doesn't mean it's a bad guess. So let's say for a minute it is true. What does 2C mean to 99.999% of humanity? I can tell you, you don't have zero. A woman wakes up in Botswana and somebody says, are you worried about 2C? Do you know anybody who wakes up in the morning and goes, wow, 2C? Do you? We are using future existential threat, because that's what it is, as a way to motivate people. The human brain is not wired, every neuroscientist will tell you, to handle and to consider future existential threat. The people who were concerned about future existential threat in the past are not in the gene pool. They're gone. The ones who stayed were the ones who were concerned about existential threats right now. That's who we are. That's who Homo sapiens are. So what we're doing basically is going in the locked back door of humanity and saying, why can't you let us in? Why don't you respond to 2C? The front door is wide open. The front door to humanity is human needs. And those needs are what? Living wage, dignified jobs that give people a sense of self-respect, that respect in their community, that gives them respect in their family, that actually do something of purpose that is helpful to all and the future of civilization. That's what human beings want to do. They want to do something meaningful. And we're the only species without full employment. Think of that. There's 10 million species. We're the only one who's figured out how to have marginalized human beings and tell them you're not valuable. We don't really need you unless you buy Nike shoes. And then we wonder why they act it out. And then say, we shouldn't act it out. Then we build industrial prison complexes and put them in there for acting it out and make money from that. Come on. You know, we have degenerative development, which is we build things and the world is worse off. And the pathway is regenerative development. And I don't have enough time to define it further than that, accepting regenerative development means that when you're done, everything is better. Social conditions, air, water, carbon, biodiversity, pollinators, etc. And I just want to finish with one of our most important scientific advisors, who said, at the end of the movie Martian, you know, spoiler alert, he did come back, you know that, he's here. But he went to a class of wannabe astronauts at a college, and basically he said, listen up. When I was up there, did I think I was going to die? Absolutely. Absolutely. And he said, this is going to happen to you. Right? Space does not cooperate. The atmosphere does not cooperate. Okay. So you can either, he said, you can either accept that or you can go to work. Then he said, you do the math. And you solve one problem. And you solve the next problem. And if you solve enough problems, you get to come home. Right? And that's what this is about. Let's do the math. Let's figure it out. Let's stop beating each other up about the science. The science is impeccable. It's a problem statement. We know the problem. Let's now move towards the solutions. We don't have time to keep batting and bashing each other about the problem. Got it. Understood. Let's work on the solutions together. You have come together with an extraordinary organization. You come together with purpose, with intention. All of you have it individually and collectively. This is your century. Take it as if your life depended on it, because it does. Thank you so much.